Good morning, welcome to Headline Focus, here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. It is the end of the week, Friday the 23rd of June 2018. Let's have a look at what's summing up the week in political news and start off with EU citizens' default residency in the UK. Now, Home Secretary Sajid Javid has said the default position for the government will be to grant residency rights to EU citizens who are currently living in the UK post-Brexit. And this is a very important announcement, of course, because since the vote that has happened, there's been a huge amount of speculation and a huge amount of worry from EU citizens and also UK citizens in the EU over what their status is going to be, what requirements they're going to have to give, and also what might change in terms of what their entitlements are when they're living in the country they're currently living in, post-Brexit when the UK leaves the EU. Now, there's 3.5 million EU citizens living in the UK, and they'll have to register with the authorities if they want to stay. This is going to be compulsory for everyone, this registration process. But it's simplified as much as possible, and this is where Sajid Javid wants to, as he says, it would be as simple as possible, simple as people can reasonably expect, with most decisions turned around within 2 weeks or sooner. So really going for that sort of simplicity emphasis here. Answering three simple questions. So citizens will have to apply, answer these three simple questions, which are EU nationals will have to show their ID, so that's straightforward, say whether they have any criminal convictions, and say whether they live in the UK. Now, it's a £170 million scheme, reportedly, operating online and on a smartphone app as well, so for ease of use that for people who are tech savvy, and it will be compulsory for all EU citizens who want to stay. Now, EU citizens and their families who've been in the country for 5 years by the end of 2020, 5 years or more by the end of 2020, can apply for settled status instead, which is that's a confirmation as well. And in terms of cost for this, because there's always been talk about, well, should people have to pay for this Brexit vote and the implications of it, it's £65 for adults, £32.50 for children. But if you're an EU national who's already had residency or indefinite leave to remain, it will be free to register. So relatively straightforward process there. Significant in terms of the mechanics of Brexit there. Obviously, immigration is a key issue within the Brexit referendum vote and indeed the political agenda at the moment. This will go some way as to provide a certain degree of clarity from the Home Secretary about what EU citizens, the relationship EU citizens are going to have with the UK post-Brexit. Next up, Airbus Brexit warning. Now, this is making quite a lot of the headlines this morning, leading quite a lot of the agendas, but the aerospace manufacturer Airbus has warned it's ready to quit the UK if there isn't more progress done on Brexit. It's basically in a protest at the Brexit negotiations. Now, they build aircraft wings in the UK. They actually have quite a big operation here. Generates £1.7 billion in tax revenues, employs 14,000 people across 25 sites in the UK, and a further 110,000 are supported through supply chains, which the company uses. Now, the key thing they want to emphasise is they need more clarity over the Brexit negotiations, and specifically what the arrangement is going to be after Brexit for businesses like Airbus, which rely a huge amount, or to a certain extent, on European-wide supply chains, routes, manufacturing, sales. Tom Williams, the Airbus COO, Chief Operating Officer, said, in the absence of any clarity, we will have to assume the worst-case scenario. Now, the worst-case scenario for them is the UK crashing out of the single market and the customs union without a trade agreement in place, or at least the principles of a trade agreement in place, or a transition period to provide that cushion for businesses so there isn't just a sudden change in regulations and a sudden change in UK-EU relationship. Now, he's also said, and Airbus have also said in this story, the reports are that the 2-year transition period alone, even though the government wants, is roughly been agreed to and the government is pushing for it, is still too short to provide the necessary cushion for businesses to really get used to and to make provisions for the changes that are going to take place under the new UK-EU relationship. In reality, this is a big headline because it's a big number of people and a lot of money which Airbus puts into the UK. Will they likely move? Maybe, maybe not, because that would be incredibly difficult. However, it's at least a warning shot to the government, again, that businesses are very much looking at Brexit and the implications of Brexit with very close scrutiny and need the clarity on it. So no doubt it will be sitting in Theresa May's in-tray this morning. Finally, one more story. £2.4 million has been spent on Commons gagging clauses, and this is reported according to the BBC. BBC News now actually came up with this report. House of Commons has spent £2.4 million on confidentiality agreements or gagging clauses for 53 staff members, reportedly, since 2013. Now, these are non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and they compel individuals not to reveal details about the Commons, and it can be used can be used, and this isn't all the time, this is very important, but it can be used to silence victims of bullying or harassment or anything like that, or disagreements in terms of when they leave the employment or from speaking out. Now, a House of Commons spokesperson has said it's not necessarily NDAs but settlement agreements, which have formerly been known as compromise agreements, which include confidentiality clauses or a confidentiality clause. And the spokesperson also said the clause is used to resolve employment disputes under certain circumstances. Now, one of these people who the BBC reports was subject to one of these clauses is Angus Sinclair, who was paid £86,000 for what he says to keep quiet about being bullied by his former boss, who's the Speaker, John Bercow. Now, John Bercow denies the allegation that he has taken part in any bullying or been bullying in any way, but certainly that is something Angus Sinclair thinks, and he certainly, as he says, according to the BBC, has received £86,000 and some kind of clause around that. But no doubt this will put further pressure on John Bercow and indeed the House of Commons and indeed Westminster more widely, as there's been over the past year, over the past couple of years, reports continuing around controversies surrounding why people have left, the treatment of people, and also some more sinister ones as well in terms of stuff in terms of people being harassed and everything like that. So more pressure will be no doubt on Westminster and in particular John Bercow as a result of that. That's pretty much it for today, and indeed this week. You're up to date. Don't forget you can find all the latest on what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. But from me and all the team here at Core London, have a fantastic weekend ahead. See you on Monday.